I'm not sure who, if there's anyone that can specifically speak to this here, but I'm wondering constitutionally, how does a minimum sentence work? How can a body of people that don't know anything about any of the future cases that come up decide what the sentence is? I don't understand that, and why would it even stand up at the level of the Supreme Court, and why hasn't it been shot down already?
Thank you. Do you want to take that, Robert? You can take it. Yeah.
That's a good question. The Supreme Court of Canada has in the past struck down a minimum sentence. There used to be a 7-year minimum for importing a narcotic, and it didn't take into account the quantity or the nature of it, and it eventually ran afoul of a constitutional challenge. But since that time, they have allowed minimum sentences that have previously been enacted to stand on the basis that they weren't persuaded that there was a realistic hypothetical situation which would make the sentence grossly disproportionate. So these have to be dealt with on a law-by-law basis. There's room in the jurisprudence to argue, and in some cases it does succeed, so that's a good thought on your part.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Denise. Thank you for having this. It's really informative. I just want to say that I'm Gitsan, and I've had, my 2 children are 37 and 34, and both my oldest son was under the Unlocking Aboriginal Justice System, where he was claimed back to the territory, and since has become quite a good young man. On my other son is a younger, he's 34, and he was stabbed on a city bus in Victoria. Sorry, and when he was he talked to the Crown and said that he'd like this young man that stabbed him an opportunity to go under the restorative justice program. So to make a long story short, I want to say that the restorative justice program that they have now is an awesome thing, because it gives the young offender an opportunity to make amends and to be able to talk face to face with the person that they assaulted and their family. But the problem with that is that there's no funding attached to it. So here's a 20-year-old man that has, a young baby that has an opportunity to be a good person in society, that, like my son has given him that opportunity, rather than see him in jail because he saw his brother, succeed because he came under the Unlocking Aboriginal Justice System. But what I'm saying is that when he came to, was given the opportunity under the restorative justice, there was no money to have this young man be able to do counseling. So when he was working for Tim Hortons, his boss said, well, I will pay for the counseling, but you have to pay it back. So there needs to be funding attached to this restorative justice.
I think we all agree.
Hi, my name is Penny Joy. I'm with Restorative Justice Victoria. 2 brief questions. One, Denise, to you, which seems to be most pressing, is the time element in all this. I gather the government is trying to shove through this bill as quickly as possible. What sort of time do we have to try and rally the ranks and really get this moving?
Well, they were able to impose a time allocation limiting the debate at 2nd reading and what will happen at 3rd reading. So that has a specific time limit, but they are not able to do that at committee. So the bill is now at committee, and there will be the committee will be hearing from witnesses, and perhaps Randall might want to add some comments, because he's also on the Public Safety Committee, which will be hearing witnesses as well. But there are some issues there about the way the government has been treating both the witnesses, as Randall said earlier, who are speaking out against the bill, and in getting some of our witnesses, or some witnesses period, to be able to speak out. So that's been problematic. Do you want to add something to that, Ron?
Yeah, thanks, Denise. Okay. I'm the vice chair of the Public Safety Committee. There are two committees that deal with these kind of things. One is justice, the other is public safety. And while the government can't use the formal time allocation, what they've started to do is simply say we will have only 6 meetings. And they have a majority government, so a majority in Parliament, a majority in every committee. And so they have not yet done that in justice, but in public safety, we start hearings on the gun registry next week. And they have simply said to us there will be 5 sessions and no more, and at that point we will close the discussions. So while they can't do it through a formal time allocation, they are using their majority to cut off debating committees. And they have indicated, I'm not sure publicly, but privately they're saying they want both the gun registry eliminated and this bill passed before Christmas. So we have very little time.
Quick question, and perhaps this is to Mr. Mulligan. I am aware that there's a community court operational in Vancouver. Has any thought been given, and is it even appropriate, in the discussions about what alternatives might happen to fund that enterprise?
As usual, funding will be an issue regardless of what the law is. As far as the law is concerned, some of the provisions in this Act still keep alive some of these specialized courts, for example, the specialized drug courts in some of the cities. But the problem with that is that those options aren't available in all the towns and small communities in this country, and so those who live outside of those large urban areas won't have the benefit of those enlightened treatment and restorative courts, but the concept is still alive.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is probably a combination question and sharing.
Do you want to say name for the purposes?
I'm Tobias Tomlinson, and I'm the coordinator for the Alternatives to Violence Project, which is a volunteer program that's run at the Victoria Youth Corrections Center here, and I'm also visiting people in Wilkie. So I'm finding, and I also used to do workshops out at William Head. So it's like I'm pretty familiar with the prison system in the area. I'm also Métis, so I do have a kind of a connection with especially the Métis youth at the youth center and the First Nations youth. So what was set up here around issues of fetal alcohol, residential school stuff, it still affects the youth today and how they view and perceive and what is family. So my sense around issues, my connection is with the individual. I can write Harper, but I don't feel like it's going to go anywhere. My feeling is that my request is, my hope is that people here will actually go and join Restorative Justice, volunteer at John Howard Society, be part of Alternatives to Violence if you want to talk to them later. What I'm finding is that I'm visiting a youth, he just turned 20 at Wilkie. I'm the only visitor. His family is up in Prince George. People need to be visited. They need to know that they're worthwhile. There's also the sense of like his new parole officer has 60 cases. She has 60 caseload at one. He's been waiting for 2 years to get his youth parole officer from Prince George to get someone here. It's been total screw up because of lack of funds. Another example of lack of funds is the pastor at the youth detention center is going to be retiring in January. They're rehiring somebody but half-time, which means programs will not happen because she's the person that organizes the programs. One other thing I'm just going to mention is we also have to be careful what programs we do. The Elizabeth Fry Society was asked by the ministry to write up proposals for girls in the provincial system. So now all programs are totally separate. There are no boys and girls together in any programs. I think that needs to be rethought as well. Anyway, those are some thoughts I have.
Those are great suggestions, and the idea of getting involved where you can with some of the groups is a great one. Thank you. But I do want to have a caution, because as frustrating as the situation is, silence is not an option, because I think that's what they want. That's what closure of the debate is about in Parliament, and I think citizens have to speak up. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Malcolm, Concerned Citizen. So tonight we've heard a lot of really great alternatives for preventative justice and options where we can be putting our money in. One thing, just in light of the time frame we're speaking of and the fact that we're in a majority government situation, is to what extent do we have the opportunity to have constructive, discussion on what we can do in this environment. And so perhaps it's not realistic to say that we're going to just stop the bill. And so in light of maybe it's a false dichotomy of spending no money on already overtaxed prisons versus money on restorative justice, where is the balance between where we can be putting our money? I really appreciated the analogy of, say we have this amount of money to spend, where we first spend it, and so on and so forth. And so I was wondering, I want to leave this open to anyone who feels they can respond on the panel. Where is that balance? How do we break out where we can effectively spend?
Okay, and Sybil. Okay, Randall and Sybil.
So there may have to be time allocation on me, but the Conservatives keep repeating their mantra of strong, stable majority government to disempower us. So a majority government does not have all the power, and the majority government can be stopped by the power of the citizenry. They want to be re-elected. Okay? So it's not true that we should simply roll over for the 4 years and let them steam ahead. We have to slow them down, we have to stick out our arms and legs, we have to shout very loudly. And remember, the last Conservative majority government we elected in this country, after the next election, had 2 seats.
Did you say steam ahead or scheme ahead? Sibylla.
Choose.
Sibylla. No, closer.
I gotta take it out? Okay. All right. There are on the World Wide Web many things that you can look up that will answer your questions, that you can study at length, and that are very clear. Interestingly enough, the Vancouver Board of Trade is a very good source for some very immediate information. They have been advancing ahead in this, and they've done studies on the costs of crime. And they have published, as has the Justice Institute of British Columbia. You can get these from both websites. There is a wonderful document called The Economic Aspects of the Development and Prevention of Criminality Among Children and Youth that outlines years of research that show very, very clearly with a beautiful chart where the money should be invested and how, with evidence-based programs that have been evaluated and that tell us that we need to invest across a continuum, beginning with the strongest investment in the early years, following through to preschool, school, post-school, and especially job training. So this is not a case of a one-size-fits-all model. It is not a case of one time only or at one age level. It's a case of a continuum with investment particularly in developing skills, education, and social intelligence, and helping parents to learn the same skills that their children are being taught, and working on this from a holistic perspective, preparing people to be able to make a social bond and a social commitment that will last them through their whole life. And the investment is what I've said. You get for each dollar invested, you get about a $16 return, and you get a huge saving that you do not have to use. Once the horse has left the barn, you do not lock the door. That's not how to get the horse back. You start by investing early and continuing through the middle school years, high school years, and into early adulthood, and you will get your returns.